If Mr. Malloy didn't just drown, then what do you think did happen?
I told you he had a fatal disease. Honesty.
Boy, honesty can be a fatal disease. Like all those journalists and politicians falling off balconies accidentally in Russia. Hello, I'm Joel Sharpton, one half of the Articulate Coven, and you are watching my watch of the original supernatural soap opera, Dark Shadows. And I have been informed by those in the know, those of you that have watched this show for years and decades previously, that we are finally into the beginnings of the actual supernatural storylines for this supernatural soap opera. It didn't start off that way, apparently. I didn't know that. I thought it was conceived as a supernatural soap opera, and they were just warming up the audience to it, I guess. But apparently it wasn't doing that well in the ratings, and that's why we had this turn into the ghostly. All right, let's get into this thing. We're watching episode 57, 58, and 59 today. And if you are watching these on YouTube, I want to remind you that you can always get next week's batch at our Patreon, articulatecoven.com/join. $2 or more a month gets you access to everything we do early and ad-free. Hey, I want to mention that we are coming up on 8 years of our original podcast that birthed this YouTube channel and everything else that we do, Articulate Coven. Ashley Wright, Eiler, and I have been together for 8 years in May doing this show and talking about the worlds and works of Anne Rice. If you'd like to help say thank you for all of that effort that we've put in to this fan base, then here's how you can do it. Join us over at articulatecoven.com if you've got the means to do so. If you don't, genuinely, we understand that times are tough, and we'll keep pumping out the great free content right here on our YouTube channel and through all the podcast apps. But if you can support us, we'd love to get to 50 paid patrons by the time we are at that 8-year mark, and we're close. We're closing in on it. You could be number 50. All right. Let's get into episode 57 of Dark Shadows.
My name is Victoria Winters. The musty corridors of Collinwood are behind me at the moment.
That girl said musty. The musty corridors of Collinwood are behind me at the moment. Oh, man. I don't know in the 60s that the word musty had quite the connotation that it does now.
Ahead of me are the streets of Collinsport itself, and a journey that might take me into the dead world of the past. A journey I hope will start in a small restaurant on the main street of this very small town.
Boy, that is a heck of a build. So here's what's happening, folks. We know that Maggie had asked her to come have dinner with her and her pa, old Sam Evans, one night. I think, honestly, when Maggie asked her that, we had the former Sam Evans still on the cast. That's how long ago it was. But that's what this is. Victoria is coming down to see if she can have dinner tonight with Sam and Maggie. So, like, that's probably 3 episodes away. We might get that in episode 59. Let's cross our fingers.
Bill Malloy, who gave me my start. When I was a kid, worked for him on the boats. He always taught me, never be afraid to take chances. Remember, he used to say, don't be afraid to climb up to the top of the mast. The worst thing that can happen is you could fall off into the water. So you know what I did?
Fell in the water?
Yeah, that's right. But the second time I made it to the top. He's quite a guy. Best in the world.
Yes, I always liked him.
Bert doesn't know he's dead yet. Oh, poor Bert. This is going to be big news.
Well, when he gets back, I'm going to buy him the biggest and best meal he ever had in his life.
Burke, haven't you heard the news?
What news?
The Coast Guard just pulled his body out of the water about an hour ago. He's dead.
That's a good cold open. That's a good cold open. All right. That's 2 of our players for today. We've got a cast of 5. That's what the budget was for these early episodes. So once you get 5 actors on screen, you know there are going to be no surprises later in the episode. We've got Maggie Evans in this one, and we've got Burke. My guess is we'll get Victoria in this episode as well.
You know, funny thing, Maggie, I have expected something like this. But now that it's happened...
I mean, you had to more than half expect Burke. Let's be honest. Like, the only reason Bill wouldn't have shown up at that meeting was if he was dead. or I mean, I don't know. I guess he could have been somebody's hostage, right? He could have been kidnapped and locked up, I suppose. But he was dead. We knew he was dead.
He ends up with his face down in the water.
Burke, I can't agree with that. Honesty didn't kill Bill Malloy. It was something a lot more simple than that.
Like what?
Like the fact that he never learned how to swim. He fell in the water and drowned.
Okay, first of all, that's kind of funny. But also, what the heck happened with the lighting just there? I think in general, this episode seems to be like a little more degraded than the last few that we've seen. The quality of the image seems like it's a little lower in the streaming version anyway. But also, like a crazy weird lighting bloom just happened there, right? Like this scene was a lot darker than it is now. And then suddenly it was brighter than any scene ever is. And then it fades slowly down to that. I'm assuming they had a light out and somebody finally got it to work.
That's all.
Do you know that for a fact?
Well, how else could it have happened?
It could have been pushed. It could have been shot.
If Mr. Malloy didn't just drown, then what do you think did happen?
I told you he had a fatal disease. Honesty.
Boy, honesty can be a fatal disease. Like all those journalists and politicians falling off balconies accidentally in Russia.
Here I come into town to have a nice lunch with you, and what do I find? You act as if you couldn't care less.
It's not a very cheery day.
You know about Bill Malloy. It's awful.
Man, I did not think about how strange it was for Vicky to come to town to hang out with Maggie on the day that Bill died. Like it was last night at midnight when she saw his body and they had the giant freak out.
I suppose he also suggested an elegant marble memorial over Bill's grave to the death of honesty. If the sheriff calls, tell him I'm on the way.
What did he mean by that?
I'm much happier not thinking about it.
Man, when there are only like 8 people in the whole town, it really would suck that 2 of them are literally in a bitter blood feud against one another.
Okay. And that's it, huh? Well, okay, thanks a lot. Yes, I'm afraid you'll have to. 4 copies. Yeah, that's right. We can't avoid the paperwork. Okay, thanks again.
Autopsy report?
Yep. Sit down, Burke.
Well, what did he say?
Sit down, will you?
He went on the phone long enough to have deeper details. Bill just drowned. I would bet money on it. The question, of course, is, did he get pushed? Was he, specifically drugged in some way earlier, et cetera, et cetera? I still think Roger did this on purpose. I don't think Bill just got morose and too drunk in his worry about all the decisions he was making.
Malloy? Burke? When did you last see Malloy?
Day before yesterday.
There's a line flub there, pretty clearly. Malloy? Burke? When did you last see Malloy? This is good. All right, good catch on yourself. I mean, genuinely, we do have to acknowledge and respect the speed at which they were creating these things. I mean, they're, again, in case you've joined us mid-journey, I want to remind you what somebody told us earlier in this series, that they were literally filming these things and then sending the camera to the news studio so that they could film the news at whatever big city they were filming this in. One would assume it was Los Angeles. But anyway, strange time in TV production, and they were trying to do some things on the cheap and also pushing the boundaries of what daytime TV had been at the time.
He said Malloy called the meeting, but he didn't have the faintest idea what it was about.
He's a liar.
Maybe, maybe not.
What about Sam Evans? Have you talked to him?
Not yet, Burke, but I will.
And then when I told Mr. Collins that I might be having dinner with you and your...
So that's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, 4 of our 5 actors. There could still be a surprise here as we wrap this thing up. I wonder, maybe this will just be a 4-actor day. They do that occasionally. I don't know. The sheriff obviously doesn't know what happened, and so he's playing it close to the vest in general. But I don't see what Burke could possibly have to gain from Bill's disappearance or from Bill's death. And if even the slightest hint of what Burke is saying was true, then obviously Roger does have a lot to gain. So go do some sheriffing, Sheriff.
There's something I have to tell you. If you hadn't invited me to dinner, I'd have invited myself.
How wooed. How very wooed.
How much do I owe you?
It's on the house. Don't worry about it. The clam chowder was 2 weeks old and the lobster rolls from last year. Just don't send me your doctor bills.
Girl, Maggie, I understand you're literally the only restaurant in town. But let's don't ever say something like that again to any customer, please. Goodness gracious. Oh.
You remember that meal we never had together?
Mm-hmm.
How about cashing in that rain check now?
I can't. I'm having dinner with Maggie and her father tonight.
Sam Evans?
Uh-huh. But maybe some other time.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure.
Let's call for coffee.
Yeah, thanks. Nice girl.
Very.
It's too bad she's always walking into the lion's den.
Man, okay, they had some really weird camera issues in that episode, and then the lighting bloom thing, and I don't know, that was a strange one, technically speaking. Story-wise, it was a good one. We're going to go into 58 and 59 today, wherever you're watching these. Don't forget, if you're watching them on YouTube, you can get next episodes over at our Patreon, articulatecoven.com/join. $2 or more a month. Get you access to everything we do early and ad-free. Thanks so much to everybody who's already supporting us. All right, folks, let's get into episode 58.